Moscow and Washington are pushing at the same time, and both want the same thing – Donbas out of Ukraine. Ukrainian forces are already on the counteroffensive. Around 300 square kilometers in the south have been liberated. Russia is trying to show a victory, but real advances are limited and costly for its army. Starlink and Telegram helped Ukraine break through and stabilize the front, slowing down enemy coordination. Meanwhile, negotiations continue. The US is offering Kyiv EU membership in exchange for territorial concessions. President Zelenskyy is ready to meet Putin, but not on Moscow's terms. At the same time, Hungary under Orban is blocking 19 billion euro in aid to Ukraine, demanding the resumption of Russian oil supplies. Can Ukraine hold its territory and maintain Western support while Moscow and Washington push at the same time? And can Kyiv reach a deal when even Europe is setting conditions? All this coming up in our episode. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has said that both Moscow and Washington are applying similar pressure on Kyiv in the context of ending the war. According to him, this pressure includes demands for concessions to the aggressor state, practically calls for Ukraine to withdraw from the Donbas region. Zelenskyy made the statement in an interview with the Agence France Presse ahead of the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. He noted that the demand to leave Donbas is voiced by both Russia and the United States.
Both the Americans and the Russians say that if you want the war to end tomorrow, get out of Donbas.
According to the Ukrainian leader, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has unleashed the deadliest war in Europe in the past century. He said that Russian forces are deliberately targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure, leaving civilians without electricity and heating as temperatures drop below zero. At the same time, Ukrainians continue to resist. According to President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, Ukraine's defense forces have moved to counteroffensive actions. As part of these counterattacks operations, the Ukrainian defense forces have liberated approximately 300 square kilometers of territory in the south of the country.
I won't go into too many details, but today I can congratulate our army first and foremost, all the defense forces, because as of today, 300 square kilometers have been liberated.
The president did not specify the time period during which the territory was liberated. At the same time, some military bloggers suggested that part of these gains may have been linked to disruption in the operation of Starlink terminals on the front line. This followed a move by Elon Musk to restrict access to the system for Russian forces after a request from Kyiv. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated that the armed forces of Ukraine capitalized on the situation while acknowledging that Ukrainian troops also encountered certain difficulties due to technical issues. Meanwhile, Poland continues to finance the operation of more than 29,000 Starlink satellite internet terminals in Ukraine. This was announced by Ukraine's Minister of Defense Mikhailo Fedorov in a post on social media platform X. The Estonian intelligence service has reported that restricting Russian forces' access to Starlink and Telegram has seriously hindered their operations on the front line. This has slowed the flow of information within the Russian military. According to analysts, these restrictions contributed to the success of Ukrainian counteroffensive operations. This statement was made by Ants Kiviselt, colonel and head of Estonia's Defense Forces Intelligence Center. Colonel Ants Kiviselt reported that cutting Russian units' access to Starlink satellite communications and restricting the Telegram messenger in Russia has significantly affected the invaders' combat capabilities. Restrictions on Starlink reduced the number of drone strikes on Ukrainian rear units as drone communications and navigations became less effective. Restrictions on Telegram slowed horizontal information exchange between units, complicating operations coordination and interaction. According to Colonel, while there are no signs of a complete breakdown in Russian military command, these factors have caused disruption in command system, tactical data exchange and coordination, making Russian operation less organized.
Thus, Russian command, fire control, and coordination between units were disrupted, which also supported Ukrainian counterattacks. It cannot be said that the Russian chain of command has collapsed, but these events have certainly affected it.
According to Colonel, last week Ukrainian forces launched a counteroffensive in the south sector of the front in Zaporizhia region to halt the advance of Russian units. This allowed them to stabilize the front line in the area. The Russian offensive has slowed significantly, and in some areas it has come to a complete halt. Ukrainian troops have also regained control over certain previously occupied territories. Meanwhile, according to Die Welt, Ukraine may consider territorial concessions as part of a possible peace settlement. The publication notes that any territorial concessions would be possible only in exchange for membership in the European Union. According to EU officials, the United States, acting as a mediator in a possible peace talks, is pushing for a scenario in which Kyiv would receive European Union membership and security guarantees in exchange for Russia gaining broad control over the Donbas region. Diplomats in Brussels say that President Volodymyr Zelenskyy would need a strong and tangible incentive in order to secure public support in Ukraine for any territorial concessions. In this context, the EU could consider accelerating Ukraine's accession process. Sources note that the peace plan currently under discussion mentions 2027 as a possible year for Ukraine's EU membership. However, officials in Brussels do not expect accession next year and view a time frame between 2028 and 2030 as more realistic. The article suggests that exchanging territorial concessions for EU membership and security guarantees resembles the approach promoted by Donald Trump to end the war in Ukraine, while raising doubts whether European governments would ultimately support such a formula. At the same time, diplomats stress that any territorial compromise would require a comprehensive and credible agreement. They add that although the EU may be willing to move toward a faster accession path to Ukraine, full membership remains difficult to achieve under existing enlargement procedures, particularly given unresolved issues related to corruption and the rule of law. Meanwhile, negotiations continue. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said that another round of talks with Russia and the United States on the potential parameters for ending the war could take place by the end of February. Zelenskyy also stated that he is ready to meet with dictator Putin. He made these remarks following a confidential report from the Ukrainian delegation on the outcomes of the previous round of negotiations in Geneva. On February 20th, the president received a detailed briefing from Ukraine's negotiation team, which included issues considered too sensitive to discuss remotely.
We believe that real opportunities to end the war with dignity still exist, and the world's ability to pressure the aggressor could significantly help ensure that a dignified peace replaces the war. We count on another round of negotiations being organized very soon, as early as this February, and on that round becoming truly productive. Ukraine's responses to the most difficult questions ahead of the next meeting are ready. The priorities for our negotiating team for the future meeting in the trilateral format and with the United States have been defined. We continue working to ensure readiness for leaders to meet and resolve issues that cannot yet be settled at the team level. It is the leaders' format that could prove decisive in many respects, and Ukraine is ready for such a format. The team must also secure conditions for progress on humanitarian issues. POW exchanges must continue. We expect that an exchange will be possible very soon.
While Ukraine remains ready for negotiations and agreements, Russia is spreading false information about the alleged capture of dozens of settlements in 2026, aiming to convince the West of the inevitable victory. The aggressor country is also circulating misleading reports on major success on the front lines, seeking to pressure Western partners to reduce or halt support for Ukraine. The Institute for the Study of War in its February 20th report refuted claims by Sergei Rudskoy, chief of the main operational directorate of Russia's General Staff, about Russia's troops' advances. Rudskoy claimed that since the beginning of this year, Russian forces had allegedly captured 900 square kilometers and 42 settlements. And in 2025, over 6,700 square kilometers and more than 300 settlements. According to analysts, the actual situation is very different. Since the start of 2026, Russian forces control only 19 settlements and 572 square kilometers, while in 2025 they occupied 252 settlements, 50 fewer than Rudskoy claimed. Analysts note that Russia focuses on small villages along the border and presents these limited advances as evidence of its troops' skill. The aim is to create a false narrative of an inevitable victory and pressure the West to concede the Kremlin demands. In particular, Russian forces carry out limited cross-border attacks in the gray zone of Sumy region, achieving minor gains at a high cost. In 2025, advances averaged 13-15 square kilometers per day, with daily casualties of about 83 soldiers killed or wounded. Hungary has blocked the release of 90 billion euros in aid from the European Union to Ukraine, demanding the resumption of Russian oil supplies through the Druzhba pipeline. The announcement was made on Friday by Hungary's Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó. He also accused Ukraine of blackmail, claiming that the halt of oil transit was coordinated with Brussels and the Hungarian opposition to cause supply disruptions and raise fuel prices ahead of Hungarian elections.
We are blocking the 90 billion euro EU loan for Ukraine until oil transit to Hungary via the Druzhba pipeline resumes. Ukraine is blackmailing Hungary by halting oil transit in coordination with Brussels and the Hungarian opposition to create supply disruptions in Hungary and push fuel prices higher before the elections. By blocking oil transit to Hungary through the Druzhba pipeline, Ukraine violates the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement, breaching its commitments to the European Union. We will not give in to this blackmail.
According to Financial Times, citing four sources, Hungary's ambassador to the EU on Friday opposed borrowing funds for Ukraine through EU budget-backed debt issuance. The European Union is expected to give final approval for the 90 billion euro aid package for Ukraine for 2026-2027 on February 24th. The decision on joint borrowing for Ukraine was made at the EU summit on December last year. The European Commission expects Hungary and other EU member states to respect the agreement reached at EU leaders level and approve the loan to Ukraine. This was confirmed by the European Commission spokesperson Balázs Uvary. The Commission hopes that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán will honor the pledge he made during the European Council meeting on December last year and support 90 billion euro package for Ukraine.
During the European Council meeting in December, a unanimous political agreement was reached to provide 90 billion euros in decisive support for Ukraine's budgetary and military needs over the next 2 years. We expect all member states to honor this political agreement to ensure the final approval of the loan.
According to European Pravda, citing Ukraine's communication with the European Commission, Ukraine has proposed an alternative route for oil transit to Hungary and Slovakia while the Druzhba pipeline undergoes repairs. Specifically, Kyiv suggests using the Odessa-Brody pipeline. The document states that deliberate attacks by the aggressor state on January 27 this year caused significant damage to elements on Ukraine's oil transport system, including technological and equipment of the Druzhba pipeline. Ukrainian diplomats informed the European Commission that specialists are currently conducting a detailed technical inspections of the damaged equipment and assessing the feasibility and conditions for the rapid restoration of oil transportation through the pipeline. The US Supreme Court has ruled that the most of global tariff imposed by US President Donald Trump on imports from other countries are illegal. In response, Trump announced an additional 10% tariff on top of existing duties. The US President plans to appeal the Supreme Court decision. Previously, Trump had implemented tariffs on imports from all countries on top of any existing duties and announced the signing of the relevant decree on his social media platform Truth.
It is my great honor to have just signed from the Oval Office a global 10% tariff on all countries, which will be effective almost immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
The law allows Donald Trump to impose this tariff for 150 days, although he may face legal challenges even here. Previously, Trump reacted angrily to the US Supreme Court, ruling that he does not have the authority to alternately set import tariffs. The justice invalidated tariffs, including duties on goods from Canada, Mexico, and China, which Trump had imposed under the pretext of combating illegal fentanyl. The ruling also calls into question certain tariffs on goods from Brazil and India. The court decision casts doubt on trade deals concluded by Trump's representatives in recent months, which were backed by threats on high tariffs, and leaves unresolved the fate of $175 billion already collected as duties. Importers have filed over 1,000 claims in trade courts seeking reimbursement. Under US trade law, they have 2 years to file a claim and request compensations. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your comments below.